Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for calling this hearing. Now, more than ever, the United States must show the world we're serious about holding Iran to account and enforcing the JCPOA, as well as examining Iran's destabilizing activities around the world. But it is impossible to talk about Iran and not talk about Russia, particularly when you consider Russia's blocking of sanctions against Iran at the UN and Russia's support of Iranian activities in Syria. But I fear that we are at a disadvantage when we have a president who seems unable and unwilling to stand up to Vladimir Putin, Iran's biggest supporter and patron. As the body in the House responsible for our foreign policy, it is incumbent upon us to examine the very real consequences of President Trump's pivot towards Russia and what that means for our national security, our relationships with allies, and the functioning of our own government. Mr. Chairman, it's been 8 months since we had a full committee hearing on Russia. I believe we are long overdue, and we must have witnesses from the administration appear before us and give a full and honest accounting of what their plans are for dealing with this unprecedented Russian aggression and meddling in the United States. Moreover, as the body tasked with oversight of our foreign diplomacy apparatus, we absolutely must require General Michael Flynn to appear before this committee and answer truthfully about what his relationship and contacts were with Russian officials before and during his tenure as National Security Advisor. The issue impacts the United States' relationship with our friends and foes around the world. If we cannot be an honest broker in our dealings with Russia, we lose credibility everywhere. And that's why 19 of my colleagues on this committee and I sent you a letter asking that we have Michael Flynn testify before this committee as soon as possible. I ask unanimous consent that a copy of this letter be entered into the record.
Without objection.
This request is made in the context of the following facts. Unprecedented Russian interference in our elections directed by Vladimir Putin to help elect Donald Trump, as concluded by 17 intelligence agencies. A sophisticated plan of hacking, fake news, and a sophisticated use of propaganda. Repeated contacts between the Trump campaign and Russians during the course of the campaign. 3 members of President Trump's inner circle, Carter Page, Paul Manafort, and now Michael Flynn, have to leave the inner circle because of their ties to Russian officials. Secret conversations between the National Security Advisor and the Russian ambassador. Then Michael Flynn lied to the American people, lied to the Vice President of the United States, and denied those conversations happening right on the day that sanctions were imposed for interfering with the American presidential elections. At the same time, Sally Yates, the acting Attorney General, brought that information to the attention of the White House counsel, and she concluded that he was a compromised individual who could be blackmailed by the Russians. What did they do? Shortly thereafter, Sally Yates is fired. Michael Flynn stays in place for 17 days with full access to classified information, continuing all of his responsibilities as a national security advisor. This is in the context of a president who is bellicose and fighting with all of our allies, Mexico, Australia, as 2 most recent examples, but has showered praise on the brutal dictator Vladimir Putin. He maligns our intelligence professionals, compares them to Nazi Germany, and at the same time, we learn that Michael Flynn has appeared at a celebration of RT, the single most powerful Russian propaganda machine, and the president has refused to answer questions about his investments or financial dealings in Russia or to produce his tax returns. Then we learn his son at a real estate conference in 2008 said, and I quote, "Russians make up a pretty disproportionate cross-section of a lot of our assets," end quote. And then he went on to say, "We see a lot of money pouring in from Russia." Mr. Chairman, I don't know what else we need to see to fulfill our responsibilities to get to the bottom of this, because we can't have a real conversation about foreign policy or the implications of our relationships with Russia, with Iran, with the rest of the world until we get to the bottom of this. And so while I'm anxious to have a conversation about Iran and anxious to have a conversation about the JCPOA, I am imploring this committee, Republicans and Democrats, to put your country before party, to bring these issues before this committee so we can get to the bottom of this. The American people expect nothing less, and I urge all the members of this committee to join those who have already asked for these hearings, because the American people are watching this and they cannot believe that there hasn't been a bipartisan effort in the House of Representatives to get to what has been unprecedented interference in our democratic institutions. The sanctity of our democracy, our ability to defend our very way of life is at stake. And so I don't have a question for this panel. I thank you for your testimony, but I think this gets to the heart of our ability to continue to be a beacon to the world, a place of democracy, of self-government, where foreign governments have no role in helping to pick our leaders or interfering in the policies that we implement in America. And I thank you, and I yield back my remaining 2 seconds.